Hey everyone! This is our very first PowerPoint lecture based on exploring literature, which is the Frank Madden textbook. This will cover pages 3 to 20, and it sort of just sets us up for how we want to read the texts that are in this book. I'm starting us off with a quote from the book, which is that our reading of literature evokes our emotion and judgment. So we want to think about that. We want to think about not just what the authors of each of these pieces bring to the conversation, but what we as readers bring as well. So, reading literature, like reading anything, should never feel like you're getting a lecture, like you're just taking in information that the author is giving you and not really giving anything of yourself back. And I want us to think about that because I want us to approach this not as it is a one way conversation or moving in a one way direction. It's not just the author giving and the reader receiving. Instead, it should feel like a conversation between the author and the reader. So while the author will bring his or her insights to this conversation, then the reader will as well. Because as we know, a reader is not a blank slate. A reader has ideas. A reader has thoughts that the piece will evoke for him or her as well. And that isn't any less valid than what the author would have to say about his or her own work. All art has to be received by someone. If it's not read or heard by someone, then what was the point of making it, right? So just remember that as the reader, your opinions on the piece and your thoughts and insights on the piece are in many ways just as important as the person who wrote them. The author's word should never be the last word on anything because that is your job, is to respond to it. So your word should be the last word. Critical thinking does not mean searching for one right answer. There may be as many answers as there are readers. Your best answers are those that analyze and articulate your responses in light of supporting evidence. So, like the author says, if you have a class of 25 of us reading, we may come up with 25 different insights or 25 different ideas of what a piece means. And that's okay. We need to give ourselves room to do that. And so we want to make sure that when we look at our responses, we're really looking at them actively. We're being active readers. We're not being passive and just letting the author tell us and kind of guessing what the author thinks based on what we heard. We really want to say, okay, well, let's break this down. Let's really take it apart and then decide what we think it means. This is going to help you later for your essay writing. When you create a thesis for your literature essay, think about why this is your opinion on the piece. So where do you see the evidence within the piece itself that helps you to understand what you believe the thesis of the piece is? Is that in the text itself? Is that in the research? Is that comparable to your own experiences? What do you bring to it? So considering these questions will help you to support your ideas and select appropriate quotes to help you support your own thesis about each piece of work. An important part about this is what we call your first response. And that means that you are going to take what your first instincts are about each piece that you read. So the first time you read a new piece, do me a favor and try to approach it as though you are reading it for fun. You don't want to go into something assuming you're already going to be writing an essay on it the first time you read it, because then maybe you're so busy thinking about how you're going to interpret the piece that you're not letting yourself, your own brain, just interpret the piece. It is one of those things that seems very simple, but we tend to complicate it because we put so much pressure on ourselves. So this requires giving yourself enough time to read each piece more than once. You want to be able to take notes as you go. You can worry more about taking notes and analyzing maybe the second or third time that you go through. Make sure, especially with the poetry, because you have the time to go through each piece 2 or 3 times, the first time you read it and just get your first impression, your first response, then go about taking it apart and analyzing it around your second or third read. Try to consistently use the first response checklist on page 5 of the textbook. This will help kind of set the guide for you as to how you feel about a piece, what things it makes you think of, your ideas, your impressions. Just remember, too, that many factors affect how we read a piece of writing, right? It's not just we don't come into a class or into a piece as a blank slate. Our experiences with reading in books, other things that we've read, right? That actually plays a part in how we might approach a reading, and we want to be aware of that. Our own culture, our own values, our own personal experiences. Think about all these factors as we read the pieces this semester. Sometimes we don't even realize how our own experiences growing up may have us feeling a certain way, whether that is a fair biasy, whether that is an unfair bias. We want to think about how we are bringing ourselves to the piece and whether there are spots where we're doing it too much or spots where maybe we could benefit from doing that more. So think about that as you go forward. Again, there's no hard and fast right answer. I want you to be able to experience the readings and experience the class, knowing that your own experiences are important and that you are bringing something to the reading just like the author is. Thanks so much for watching the first PowerPoint, and I will talk to you again soon.